Welcome to the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, a bi-weekly podcast for anyone interested in the freestanding ambulatory surgery industry. This episode is sponsored by Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. The ASC regulatory environment is increasingly challenging, but organizations that outsource their regulatory oversight to Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies have an edge. AHS works with ASCs to oversee their quality improvement, risk management, emergency and infection control programs, run their meetings, develop education programs, and always be prepared for surveys.
Welcome to episode 54 of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle for Thursday, May 16th, 2019. Recorded from the ASCA 2019 in the Gaylord Opryland Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Judy D'Ambrosio, and I'm here with John and the lovely Sue Cronkite and Alex Borneman.
So welcome, everybody. This was quite a trip just to get everybody together. We are recording from Alex's hotel room here.
Very professional.
Let's describe our setup. Yeah, please describe our professional setup.
We have the microphone sitting on the ironing board between the two beds, and we're all just kind of sprawled around on the beds, and Judy's in a chair, and we're just all trying to talk as loud as we can so that we get...
And I'm trying not to fall off the bed here, by the way, as I'm...
Hey, we're resourceful.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Well, for anybody that listened to episode 53, recorded 2 days ago, outside with all the wind blowing... And the table, I think that this is a big improvement. Plus, we're using our ultra-expensive Yeti microphone, which is supposed to be able to pick up everything in this room. So we'll see how this works.
So I hope it's better than the quality of the other one.
I listened to the other one, and he sounded just fine.
Good.
We learned from our failures.
That's right.
Which will bring us... I know, is that a good segue? I'm learning. So... We were going to talk about, we had Scott Hamilton was the keynote speaker, and he was really, really good. He was very, energizing.
He was a keynote this morning, the opening session today.
Yeah, he was really good. One of the big things I took away, one of the phrases he said, failure is just information. Yeah. You don't take it as something that'll knock you down. You have to, what are you going to learn if you win all the time? So if you fail at something, you go, okay, what could I have done better? Here's where I focus. And it was really good. It was very inspiring. I think everybody thought so.
Well, there was one moment when he asked everybody who had failed to raise their hand. And first of all, it was interesting to see how many people actually sat there and admitted it. Yeah, as he said, for those of you who are not raising your hand, you're lying to me.
Yeah, or you're not listening.
That's right.
Or you're lying.
And for myself, if I think of all the things that have happened in my life that haven't gone well, they've all brought me to where I am today. We've had some deep conversations, actually, among various
triggered by that.
Yeah, triggered from this whole conversation. So his message, I think, was quite deep about, recognizing failure as something that is just a step toward your ultimate successes.
Yeah, and he was focusing also on thinking about your everyday wins and that commitment to showing up every day and actually having a purpose and, going and doing your job, but not just clocking in, clocking out, but showing up and having a goal for each day.
Right. And having passion for what you're doing.
Exactly.
I think everybody... Interestingly, so I did a session today on Finance 201. And by the way, I've already seen some of the results, for the thing. And one of the things that they said about me, clearly John is passionate about finance, which is something that I think...
Nerd.
I don't know if that was... I did kind of take that kind of negatively. But thank you for whoever said that. But because I always joke, my career path could have gone in a different direction. As I say, in high school, when they suggested different careers based upon your interests, I could have either become an actuary or an accountant. And I chose the exciting field of accounting over the boring life of actuary.
Well, John, when they look at you and you have a pocket protector with a calculator in it, it's hard not to give you those
I
choices.
know where you're going.
I'm afraid that's
I've seen his
But that's why people really love to hear you talk, though, because you do show that you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I know we're kind of all laughing about it, but
No,
people really enjoy that, to see your enthusiasm.
Well, and I hope that we translate that into, everything we do. This has been a very busy day, by the way. I mean, I am totally exhausted. I know you're all exhausted here. I can't believe we're doing this. But this is how dedicated and passionate we are about this.
Our commitment.
Yeah, that's right. And I know everybody's going to have a lot to say here, but, I think if we can take that commitment, if we can take that passion back to our center. Every time that I attended these conferences, this is my 29th year here. Every time I've come back from these conferences, I have just had so much enthusiasm, so much energy. And unfortunately, then the real world comes in and, things happen that kind of force you to kind of get back to reality. But we've got to take that passion back and make sure that we, bring it back to our people. Because, every day is tough for everybody. And the passion is what helps us to inspire them to do better and to, provide high quality care. So, what I wanted to do, the question I've asked all the staff here is just to kind of talk about some things that you learned today or something that really stuck out. I think it's always just a great way to kind of summarize. We will be doing an extensive session after the conference is all over. This might be our last recording here simply because we just are running out of time with everything going on. So I'm going to start, let me start with Judy. Judy, what type of a takeaway did you have today? Again, today is the first full day of the conference.
Yeah, really busy day. So each of us got to go to 4 or 5 different sessions, so it's hard to just pick one that you really took something away from. I'm going to pick the last one I attended, which was at the 3:30 to 5 session. It was called How to Conduct a Meaningful QAPI Study, and Retta from Surgical Care Affiliates was my speaker for that. And there were a lot of things about this particular session that I not only enjoyed, but found really informative. As a lot of you know, I write a lot of quality studies for a lot of our clients, whether they're my clients or just...
We refer to, talk about nerd.
I am
we refer to her as the QAPI QI study queen.
Okay.
Yes.
And I found Retta really engaging. Because maybe a lot like finance, there isn't a whole lot. It's hard to muster a lot of excitement for people because, one, they don't want to do the study in the first place.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So it's something they feel that's thrust upon them. So to create any excitement or any enthusiasm about the concept itself, I gave Retta a whole lot of credit for that. And she did something that I found really interesting, in that it was the only session I attended all day where I was sitting at a table. All the other ones, we were sitting in those straight back chairs, which is fine. I mean, I know we were dealing with space, and I get that. But she had these round tables set up because she had ulterior motives. And then 4 or 5 times throughout her session, she would force you. She would throw out a question like, we're going to do a study on patient falls. You've had 13 falls in 2 months at your center, which is, god awful, God forbid. So then she made you talk to the people at your table. And I'm sitting at 8 people I had never seen before. And I know a lot of people here, but these were 8 people I had never seen before. And you are thrust into sharing your ideas. And it's amazing how somebody can look at something from completely the other direction. Mm-hmm. And when you're all sitting in those rows and those lines, nobody talks to anybody.
Yeah.
And your speaker's probably very engaging, and that's fabulous. But those 5 conversations I had, those 5 different 10-minute conversations were fabulous with these 7 women that were at my table. And I hadn't had a speaker do that with us before in any of the sessions.
Yeah, so unique.
Yeah, Alex, you were in there with me. Mm-hmm. So I found that great.
Mm-hmm.
Just that that forced sharing of information.
When I've seen you doing education for some of our clients, you always bring that up, that you want other people that are listening to talk amongst each other and ask questions, because you always say you're going to remember much more. See, I've been learning. You're looking at me.
I do. I say it every time, too.
They're going to learn so much more talking amongst themselves and having their own questions than just listening to you talk.
Me drone on.
So that's,
stuff.
yeah.
So I give Retta a lot of credit, because that really worked out well.
Good.
Plus, I learned a lot. Me, who thinks I'm the guru, I learned a lot of things from her. And ways to approach a problem, have a brainstorming session and bring in people from all different departments and just sit and talk about, how we can best approach this. And the idea that there are weak...
Yeah, I really liked her...
Weak, moderate, and strong ways,
her action hierarchy.
Yeah, the action... and in the handout, and if anybody ever needs it for me, you can just email me and ask. There was this website that has a response hierarchy, so that there are weak plans of correction, moderate plans of correction, and strong. And I'm like our director of education, so when she had education as the first thing on the weak box, I was like, hey, wait a second. I do that for everything. And I was like offended. And then as we started to talk about it, it is. You'll be droning on to people that have heard it 600 times before. And I never looked at it that way. Yeah. So I was really impressed with that one. I enjoyed myself.
Well, and I think hands-on education was higher up, so that, there's still some education as you go up the scale, but
I think that in the session that I attended along the same vein, the develop a meaningful copy program using internal and external benchmarking data with Tina DiMarino and Deborah Stitchcomb, and there Judy, you attended with me as well, and they talked about involving the rest of your staff in the QI studies and just getting ideas from people like. They both had some different ideas, but basically just asking your staff, what would you change? What is driving you crazy every day when you come in? And they can either, one idea was just have them submit some ideas, and whoever's idea was picked, they would get, just a small gift certificate for coffee or whatever, but just something to get them involved. And the other one where she actually would ask, she would only do this about every year or two, get everybody involved in picking something they'd like to study, going through the steps of a QI study, and then having a big luncheon, have everybody come in and share the results, and they win first, second, third prizes, and again, just get small prizes. But, just to get people to buy in, and if there's something that they see really needs to change, they're going to buy into doing it and all of the remedies they have to do. A lot more if it's something they really believe in. The adoption you get for the concept, the adoption of those changes and the acceptance of those changes, if they were involved in deciding what changes need to be made. And things you might never even think of need to change, but these are people that are
especially in an administrative position.
On the front lines, kind of.
You don't know what your scrub tech deals with on a day-to-day basis. And not because you don't care, it's just because So, I think the involvement of a whole staff for something like that is invaluable and not done very often. Usually you're getting these studies done in a hurry because, oh my God, it's the end of the year and I have to have one, and what will I do? And, thinking about it ahead of time and involving as many people as possible is going to make it a whole lot, less stupid.
It comes down from on high, and people are kind of like, oh my gosh, one more thing I have to do.
One more memo.
But if you're like, wow, this is going to make my life easier. Oh, I love this idea. Then, then you get excited and you're more likely to actually participate in it and fight that change.
It's more relevant to you. Actually, if you're just, don't just be doing QA studies because
oh my God, it's
to do it.
Year and I have to do it.
That's absolutely right. And the more relevant you make it. And I would also push out there, now speaking from the financial side, putting my financial hat on, don't forget, you can do QI studies, in non-clinical areas too. There's always, something that you can do, with regard to the financial area, gathering data at the reception desk, case costing. Or
I'm doing my first case costing one for one of our clients.
Beautiful.
I hadn't done them before, and I'm finding it fascinating.
Yeah.
Even without the finance bent.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really cool to do that, to actually think about, right down to the 3-cent 4x4.
And I think Deborah was talking about the external benchmarking, how you compare yourself to other centers, but you shouldn't necessarily judge, we're worse than everybody else, we've got a problem, but it gives you a starting point. You could look into it and say, okay, maybe our population is just less compliant, or, we have some problems where we have a lot of cancellations or whatever it is. It's not necessarily a good or a bad. She just kept repeating that. It doesn't mean you're better. It doesn't mean it's a problem, but it's something that you can look at and just explain why. If you can explain it and you understand it, okay, it might be something you just have to live with.
She actually made it very clear to the people in the room that seemed surprised when she said it, that you can end your study by saying, you're right. We didn't hit the 90% threshold that we set for ourselves, but we have determined that this is the very best we can do based on where our center is, what our patient population is. And then if you don't hit whatever threshold that you set for yourself, it's okay to say, we've come to the conclusion that this is the best we can do here at this center, and not... You still need to compare yourself.
Yes.
The external
but it's not just the numbers.
A valuable piece of information, but you can't look at their number and think, oh my God, we're so bad. Well, it may not be that bad.
So, Alex, you obviously tend to head toward those more of the environmental type things. What was what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, so even actually going off of Sue, as far as trying to get that buy-in, the collaboration, I went to the session on emergency preparedness, and those Lori Rodricks and
one of our own employees, actually.
Yeah.
We filled in. Thank you, Lori, for filling in for a speaker that unfortunately had to back out at the last minute, along with
Terry Mahoney,
right,
who also was great.
Yeah. And
they talked about really trying to get the involvement with your community. And what I liked was they gave us a few more avenues or strategies for doing that, whether that be attending the meetings with the emergency preparedness in your state or city, depending. Even getting your fire department to come in, police department, anybody really that you can, your hospital, even talking to them. Right, exactly.
And that especially becomes important with like things like active shooter, getting the police involved. And by the way, if you're not doing active shooter training for all of your employees, it doesn't matter really where you are right now in the country. It's a big issue that you should be looking at.
And everybody has a different response to it.
Right.
I've had people saying that they're going to go grab a weapon and defend themselves and the patients, and
that's Texas.
I mean, it was in New York. If you're listening.
Yes, and as scary as
sometimes
Jen
a little
is hopping
scary
around there, the police might make even a better impression.
But the interesting thing too is that they mentioned that we don't always think about the resources that we have. Oftentimes when we're thinking about offering our services to emergency departments, we're thinking about, okay, what kind of patients can we treat? Okay, I'm a pain management facility. I don't have the ability or the doctors or the staffing to really even handle that many patients. But you might be a great place because you have a generator for the volunteers to come and either recuperate or if they need medical treatment or stay overnight, you have
You're
beds.
talking about something like a mass casualty, God forbid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even just, like
but even
you said,
a pain clinic.
laying down and resting, anything like that.
Yeah, if you have a generator and you're up, you still have nursing care with, bandage. There's still, anybody can do anything.
But so I feel it's necessary to kind of point out the counter of that right now is that makes an assumption that we're going to have staff available to do something about it. Depending upon the type of emergency that occurs, you might not have staff that
at what time of day
you might not be able to get to.
Yeah.
Like we live in upstate New York, a snowstorm, obliterates the place during the night.
Yeah.
We can't even get to the center.
Get there to help anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also could be there and trapped and
It's a good point.
Open the doors.
And sometimes you might not even really need the staff in there, depending on what sort of systems you have in place.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we worry about medications when there's nobody that we know in the center. But something to think about, and also persistence with trying to get in touch with your community. Terry was saying that she took her 3 years before they actually started trying to involve her in the community action program. Yeah. So just know that if you don't hear from them the first year, you should still keep reaching out and making relationships. That was the other big part, because if you have a problem in your center, say you've got a plumbing issue, you want to have a plumber available that's ready to come in at a moment's notice and help you out. And the best way to have that is for them to know you, because
build up that loyalty.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And your emergency team around you in your community is exactly the same thing. You want them to know you. You want your people to know them.
Yep.
That makes sense.
So I just want to point out a couple things that have. First of all, this has been an incredible session. I've already done two sessions. I have one more coming tomorrow. Yesterday I did Cask Review. Did a wonderful. I got to tell you, for all the people that are listening that were members of that audience, I am not kidding when I say you are the best audience that we have had in a very long time. And it is that reason why all of us were rushing through the last 40 slides of our slide deck. And I apologize about that. The good news for all of you is that our slides are prioritized. So all the important stuff is front-end loaded. And we didn't feel bad afterwards. We all sat down and said, my goodness, we really had to rush through. But what we found is that so much of what happened was we had a lot of interaction with the audience. The audience was asking excellent questions. And that's what's important here, I think, during all of these sessions. It's important for speakers, to have to be able to turn on a dime when you realize that the audience wants more information about one area. All I can do when I put together one of my speeches is try to predict what you want to know. But every audience is different. Every mix of people that are out there, have a different anticipation coming into it. And at least, for both of the sessions I've done already, really the audiences have been fantastic. I don't know what it is about Nashville. It must be the wonderful. By the way, there was a round disc outside hanging in the air.
Is that the moon?
It might have been the moon. I don't know. We don't see this particular thing in upstate New York. Somebody told me it was the sun.
Okay. So during the day, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The moon I've seen, it was the other I hadn't.
So the sun seems to have had a good effect on our audience.
Well, guys, we're almost like in a greenhouse.
I know.
So even though we've been inside the whole time, you feel like you're basking in the sun.
And so what we found is that we were getting such good feedback from our audience. We were answering a lot of their questions. I think we really were able to kind of mold it to the types of questions that they had and a lot of good advice. I just want to point out a couple things that came out of this session. Just because we're the educators doesn't mean that we don't learn something here. So a couple things happened during this. Alex, you'd probably be interested in that. Somebody mentioned that they actually bring OSHA into their centers, and we know that there's this voluntary program out there, to come in and kind of look at their operation voluntarily and to see how well they do things. And now, obviously, you don't bring them in until you're pretty sure that you do a good job. But there's two programs out there. One is called the SHARP program. I don't know an awful lot about this. We will gather some information for future podcasts on this. But I wanted to bring it out because maybe some of you are, really feel that you do a great job out there in the audience, on your OSHA programs. And you want to get some recognition for it. And apparently, OSHA does a real good job about publicizing how well you do. I mean, they make a big deal out of it.
Really?
And the SHARP program, SHARP program, is a certification program. It's voluntary. And you invite them to come out and basically kind of do a survey, and then they give you some feedback. You try to fix anything. And then you get some type of a certification for it. And then there's another level of it called the Voluntary Protection Program, which almost sounds similar to an accreditation in some ways, because they come out periodically, come out like every couple of years.
Like an accreditation in OSHA safety.
Exactly.
How fabulous is that?
It is. And so this is called a VPP program, Voluntary Protection Program. So we don't know a heck of a lot about it.
We're going to find out.
The people in the audience that, that talked about, they were passionate about the fact that they had gone through these programs and the recognition that they got and the feelings that the employees get from knowing that they're working in a safe environment. It was, thank you for, I don't know who actually brought those things up, but thank you for that information. Then I want to talk a little bit about some other interesting things that happen. So remember, when we do the CAST review course, it's a broad discussion about various aspects in it. And one of the things we talked about was human resources. And somebody brought up a point that they had an employee. This is unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up, right? They had an employee that embezzled money from the organization. So they fired the employee for embezzling the money. Mm-hmm. The employee turned around and sued the surgery center for wrongful termination. Now, I don't know. We didn't get a lot of the facts there as to how this happened. The employee, after being terminated for embezzling, won the case and ended up getting like 3 times as much money as they embezzled back.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. But, I mean, again, this happened to one of the people in the audience, and I have to believe. Actually, I really kind of believe these things can happen. So, the takeaway on this is you got to be very careful about terminations. You have to be very careful about what is happening, out there, and make sure your documentation trail is really very complete. Next on my list, if I can get my iPhone here to open. Our service animals. We've been talking about this a little bit.
The horses.
Yeah.
Horses.
Miniature horses.
Do you have a story about the horses? Or
No.
We wrote a policy.
We wrote a policy. That's right.
Wait, no, they said in our session yesterday.
Yeah.
The only 2 animals that are approved are, and I thought she said a dog and a miniature horse.
Yeah.
And I thought she was kidding, and I'm giggling, and Alex is like, Judy.
No.
We wrote a
It's the
policy.
true thing.
Yeah.
I laughed at Jenna for a whole day while she was writing the policy.
I know.
Well, knowing how much
It's
a dog
true.
lover she is, I knew this was a passionate thing, but I didn't know that we had to put horses in there. Well, here's an important thing. So we have to understand something with ADA rules. And I did look up the ADA rule. and I'm quoting now, some but not all service animals are licensed or certified and have identification papers. If you are not certain that an animal is a service animal, you may ask the person who has the animal if it is a service animal required because of a disability. Also, you're allowed to ask what the animal does for that person. So, but you are not allowed to ask them to prove that this dog or this horse is certified. So, interesting, isn't it?
That seems.
So then what's the point of asking? So you ask
you ask.
John, that's a lovely miniature horse you have there. Can you tell me what it is exactly that,
And you carry a bucket with you.
Just go behind it with one of those brooms.
That is point number 2, by the way, is that we still have to follow infection control requirements. So if the animal is not
allowed in
sanitary.
surgery.
Yeah, it's not allowed in surgery. So if you're out there, first of all, I do really encourage you to write these policies before they come in with their pet ostrich. Just make sure that
and send John pictures if you have any horses coming in.
An interesting service animal thing to share with us.
Not of the patient, but of the miniature horse.
Yes.
Yeah, don't take pictures of the patient.
Be sure of that.
A couple other things that I had. By the way, Sue, I told something about a product called Glitterbug, which I believe is an offshoot of a product that we're using for.
I don't remember the name of it, but we had ordered it. It's a gel that you rub around your hands, and then you wash your hands like normal, and you see where there's some left. I think you have to look under a black light, so it's pretty useful.
Right. Well, there's another product, I believe, by the same manufacturer called Glitterbug, which you put on a counter or on a surface.
Oh, okay.
And then you use the black light to determine that your cleaning company has actually cleaned that counter for the appropriate amount of time.
Oh, that's a great
idea. I do suggest it is, and I actually think that it's something we probably should be writing into some of our policies on a periodic basis to double check our cleaning companies.
Yeah.
So the Glitterbug is the product. Again, we don't really we don't like to endorse any specific product.
Yeah, we're not endorsing a product. We're just
right. But when I did look, I'm not sure there's anybody else out there that does that. So another little piece of information. And then the opening session today. I know we've kind of jumped around a whole bunch, but the opening session last night, the president of ASCA and the executive director had a conversation about various things. And just a couple takeaways that we haven't talked about. A lot of what they talked about, we talk about on a regular basis. But so remember, we talked about Leapfrog, which is an organization that is doing a survey for the ambulatory surgery industry. They already do the survey for other organizations. And we did make the point on the podcast, I don't remember what episode it was, that this seems like a very interesting project. It seems like they're asking for a lot of information. We're very, we want to be very careful to make sure that this information is accurate as it gets out there. It turns out, I did not know this, but Leapfrog is a nonprofit organization that is actually funded by some of the major employers in the country. And one of the things that they've become interested in is trying to steer organizations to quality organizations and cost-effective organizations, which, by the way, guys, that's us. So Leapfrog is doing an experiment this year in gathering information. I do believe that the information they're gathering is quite extensive, probably much more than the average surgery center has time to be able to submit. They gave me a disc with that information. They're handing that out during the conference. If some of you are listening to this podcast before they go back to the exhibit hall, do get a copy of this to at least see what's this like. This first year, all they're doing is gathering information and kind of keeping it internal to experiment with. It's all voluntary. Right, so there's no charge for this. So I talked to the people at Leapfrog. I was able to visit with them today, and we talked about them. We're going to talk about the Leapfrog product. Sue, I'll look at it. We'll probably talk about it a little bit more during the session. And I think we're going to have the Leapfrog people on to talk about the results when they finally come out later on. And maybe some of our guest hosts, periodically that can talk about more specific information there. So I thought that was very, very enlightening. Bill also talked about one of the things that's coming up. There's a lot going on. There's not a lot going on in the regulatory area, thank goodness, right now. We're just trying to catch up from the regulatory issues in the past. But President Trump has put forth a recommendation to deal with the surprise billing issue. Now, those of us in New York and many other states, by the way, have been dealing with this in the past. Surprise billing is the concept that you go into a surgery center, you go into a hospital, you think your bill is going to be this, and then suddenly you get this surprise bill because you don't realize or were never told that one of the providers of the service is out of network.
Yeah, it could be somebody reading your results. It could be the lab. I mean, just all this behind-the-scenes things that people don't think about.
Right. And we know that it's been active at the state level. New York has regulations that require us to disclose that type of information. And I'm glad to see that this is being dealt with at the federal level now. So keep an eye out for that. We'll follow that movement. I think it's supposed to be done through executive order as opposed to legislative at this point to try to get it, implemented a lot quicker. So we will follow that. So, and today's, I got to tell you, so my second session today was Finance 201. And man, first of all, I had a ball. You know how much I love to talk.
You always do, though.
I know. I love to talk. And I had a great audience. They were, we just had a lot of fun. So, but it was, what I'm finding, first of all, it was crowded in that room. So we had a lot of people there. And what I've noticed in the last couple of years is that I think we had a drop off in the number of people that were attending finance sessions. And I asked the audience how many of them were nurses in there, and 3/4, of the room at least were nurses there, seeking some good information about finance. And this could be dull stuff, because it's real numbers and I'm looking at the nurse here. Yeah, no, it's not.
That's sarcasm.
Yeah,
I'm not the numbers person, but I think even people that have written into the podcast, they're asking for more financial stuff. So it's.
So we are going to be adding it in here, and I'm going to hope to take some of that passion that I put forth to the finance session today and bring it on the podcast here. And I really got a lot of good, there's a lot of good questions that were asked of me, and I've made note of this. And by the way, for those of you that are not aware, they are recording most of the sessions here this year.
I noticed that.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to listen. So you'll be able to listen to me. Pick on all the doctors and the people from New Jersey on the room.
It'll be running like a continual loop probably in our house.
Yeah, it will be. Yes, absolutely.
Now, is it just going to be on the ASCA site?
Yes.
How are you going to?
You can go to the ASCA Association website, ascassociation.org, and there's a whole section for education where you can buy, and it's very reasonably priced.
Okay.
But, we as the ASC Podcast with John Goehle will try to obviously summarize a lot of this, because I do know that many of you don't have the time to even come out here, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Anybody else have anything that really stood out?
Well, we were talking a little bit about passion, and I know there was one speaker that had a lot of passion that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Alex Sheen.
I shouldn't say young kid. The younger gentleman from yesterday. He was fascinating.
He was.
He started a movement, 3 years ago now, and it's called Because I Said I Would.
Oh, yes.
And the idea that if you say you're going to do something, you actually do it. And how he was speaking a lot about his father. And how his father and the generation that his father was in, and my father too, for that matter.
Yeah.
A man's handshake and his word were, meant everything. And that's not to belittle any other generation, and not, it's just that it doesn't seem to be as big a deal to people anymore as it was when I was a kid, which, 125 years ago, I realized. But he was a passionate kid, wasn't he? I mean, that was...
Yeah, and he was, even though, his father he was a pharmacist, I think.
Right.
But he said he was kind of just your average guy. But when he really thought about it, that you could always count on him.
Right.
And he sends these cards out, right? And it was kind of funny because he said, one day I just kind of thought, I said, okay, I'm going to offer to send out this because I promised I would.
Well, he made the mistake of actually saying on social media.
Yes. You put it on Facebook or whatever. I will mail you 10 of these cards free of charge to anybody that asks for them. And it's just this white piece of paper, and in the bottom corner it says, Because I Said I Would.
Yeah. And he's gotten them back, tons of them. So he has all these really great
went
stories.
Viral, and it was all these cards that went all over the world.
All of a sudden it's, 15,000.
But I noticed outside this general session downstairs, there's a board up, and there's cards from us, from the ASC people.
Yeah,
really?
People are filling them out. There's a little table.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, there's a table you can fill it out.
I didn't notice it until the end,
out.
and I thought that was the coolest thing.
Well, it talks about the power of... It's not only the importance of standing up to your commitments, but making them in the first place. finding something that you've decided that you're really going to commit your life to, or a couple of minutes to, whatever that is, and it's really
I wrote
kind of
yesterday.
no matter what.
I told you about the one I wrote yesterday.
Really, the whole underlying thing. No matter who you are, what you have, there's always something you can contribute, something important about you that you can do to lift somebody else up, or to help somebody. So don't keep waiting until you have that job where you make more money, or
you find
you retire.
And you have free time.
Yeah, but now I'll volunteer. Figure out what you can do, where you are, with what you have, to
make that
just
promise
do something,
and then keep it.
Yeah,
right. And I think an important note too is that we don't all have to post them on social media if we don't want to.
Right.
Yeah,
this is coming from a millennial too.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us that would be out of our comfort zone posting or a promise and having the world hold us accountable for it. But I think a big part of his movement too is just learning how to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because
some of these guys don't have to go outside.
Yeah.
Just
a change of your mindset.
It's an acceptable thing to make a promise to yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will keep trying today. I won't give up today. I won't say or think bad things about me. Because we have a problem in nowadays too with depression and all that. So just that I'm going to stick up for myself today.
Well, and one of the promises that I've made is to continue doing this podcast because no matter how much difficulty we've had in sometimes in getting these things off, it has been an incredible journey that we've taken, hasn't it? As I'm looking around the room here, the Judy who started out.
And how many people still from across the table, I recognize your voice. Yeah. You're Judy. You're on John's podcast. People are still listening to this.
Yeah.
Without fail, we know of people that listen to it in the car with their kids.
I know. Those stories.
So isn't that fabulous that we bring this to them, that they need it and we have it and it's there for them.
So I want to thank, because we did ask everybody to come up and say hi to us. Clearly they got the message, and that has been getting around. Thank you for all of you that have stopped us. Thank you for people that have given us some suggestions. We've taken them. We'll definitely take them back here. We have got a lot of great things planned. We're looking to do some special guest stars coming up. We have a lot of state association meetings coming up. New Jersey's coming up. A keynote coming up here. We've been asked to have a little recording studio there to record a number of things. So we got a lot more coming up on the ASC podcast. So thank you, Judy D'Ambrosio, Director of Educational Services, Alex, Director of Operations, Sue, Senior Nurse Consultant with AHS. This is John Goehle signing off from the ASCA 2019 at Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee.
Woo! Yeehaw!
Oh, Lordy.
John, Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies is really growing fast. We've been adding employees steadily over the past 12 months. Can you tell the listeners what's been happening?
So clearly this podcast has been very popular, thanks, of course, to you and me, because our wonderful work here and our infectious, I don't know if I should be using infectious personalities in a podcast here about infection control and various items, but definitely we're enjoying doing this, and certainly the word is getting out about the great things that we're doing at AHS. So recently we added infection prevention consulting to our services and mentoring of infection control preventionists in the organizations, and that's being headed up by Lori Rodericks, who is our newly certified CAIP individual. So she has the Certified Ambulatory Infection Preventionist certification now, and she's always been doing infection control for us, but now she's got this new title. So she can do ongoing infection control consulting, particularly if you don't have a qualified IC person on staff. She can help you in following up on infection control issues. She can do mentoring of infection control staff, and she can do infection control and sterile processing competencies. And we've also enhanced our life safety services by adding Jim Masters to our staff. He is a life safety surveyor, and so he joins Alex Borneman, who is our Director of Operations, to be able to do various life safety surveys and consulting on life safety issues, as well as probably the most important thing is follow up on life safety citations. That's a very difficult area for many organizations to be able to deal with, what happens when you get a life safety citation? How do you deal with that? So we now have that ability. And of course, our unique retainer-based regulatory services where we help keep you on top of all the ASC regulatory requirements and always make sure that you are survey ready.
This podcast is an educational and operational tool and is not intended to be a comprehensive resource for all the rules, regulations, and standards that an ambulatory surgery center must meet. The advice provided should not be considered as, nor does it constitute legal advice or opinion. When reviewing specific situations involving legal and regulatory issues, attorneys and other professionals should be consulted. This has been a production of Eden Group Development, all rights reserved. We would like to thank this week's sponsors. First, Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, one of the nation's leading regulatory compliance and financial oversight firms. For a free consultation, contact John Goehle today at 585-594-1167 or through email at info@ah-strategies.com. And Eden Group Development, which publishes ASC Regulatory Compliance Series, the ASC industry's leading books including the Survey Guide for ASCs, a guide to the CMS conditions for coverage and interpretive guidelines for ambulatory surgery centers, and Ambulatory Surgery Center Governance, a guide for ambulatory surgery center owners and governing body members. These must-have books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble or directly from the publisher at reg-books.com. That's reg-books.com. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the ASC podcast with John Goehle, please email us at info@ascpodcast.com. We would love to hear your questions and comments. Please email us at comments@ascpodcast.com.